All right, welcome to this week's episode of KUDEN Radio. This is episode 276, so I guess I better get planning for whatever we're going to do for episode 300. Anyway, of course, I'm Dai-Shihan Miller, and I'm your guide on this path of, warrior protector training, strategy, mastery. I try to think that, or I think that I try to focus on the uh, full spectrum of what's involved in this art. But I don't know, we all delude ourselves in one way or the other. Anyway, today's topic has come right out of one of my group coaching calls with my inner circle students, specifically this past Friday. Right, we have a coaching call on Friday mornings for those who have odd schedules, right? Can't do evenings and whatnot, or they're in a different part of the world. And so this is specifically came from a discussion with one of my students, Terrence, right? And this discussion was so valuable, right? He made it like a wish list kind of thing, right? Um, I knew it needed to be shared, right? So, what I told him after we came through this thing was that, this would make a good kuden. This would make for a book in and of itself, a bunch of articles and whatnot. So, I don't know. We'll see how deep I go with it. But anyway, what we're going to do during this episode is we're going to take a look at something that most people overlook. As a matter of fact, even one of the Soke, one of the master teachers, has said that Westerners don't give this the attention that it deserves, right? But this is one of those things that is absolutely critical to mastery, right? And that is how to be a good uke, right? I consider this to be the other half of mastery training, and so this episode is going to be a deep but important part of your journey, right? So stay tuned, and I'll talk to you as soon as we get back.
So, the big question is this: how are self-defense and success-minded people like us, concerned citizens worried about protecting ourselves, our loved ones, and the things we care about from the monsters we know exist in the world? How do we train in a way that gives us the skills, knowledge, and understanding we need without becoming paranoid fighters or killers ourselves, and yet still allows us to be the hero protector the world needs us to be? That's the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Jeffrey Miller, and welcome to KUDEN Radio. Real training for real people in a real world.
All right, we are back and officially started, right? So let's see. Before we dive in, right, if you're finding these lessons helpful, of course, right, make sure to like this episode, subscribe, share it with someone you know who's serious about training. Whatever platform you're listening in on, right, do those things. If you're over on YouTube, hit the bell, notifications, all that wonderful stuff, right? So anyway, James, who's on? I see the numbers are, slowly climbing, but anybody you need to say hi to?
So far, Alan's the only one who's checked in.
Alan, all right. So we'll check back again here shortly. But again, as a reminder, if you weren't on for the pre-intro, my little lead-in monologue, right? As a reminder, especially if you're late to the party, today's topic came right out of a recent inner circle coaching call with one of my students who, to say the least, was so jazzed about the lesson that he thought that this should be shared with everybody. Like, it's that important. And you know what? I agree. Right. So, having said that, if you like this episode and you get a lot of value out of it, you are welcome in advance. If you don't, It's all Terrence's fault. So we'll see if you're a fan or if you just threw Terrence under the bus by the end of the episode. All right. So anyway, to kind of recap things, as Hatsumi Sensei used to remind us, Uke is the teacher. Right? Manaka Sensei emphasized that Uke carries the responsibility of keeping the form alive, while Ishizuka Sensei taught that Uke is how you learn the true feeling of Budo. Right? Nagata Sensei used to say, if you punch like a bad actor, you'll get bad taijutsu. And that's on both ends, not just the Uke's end. Right? You're going to screw up the Tori's taijutsu as well. And Tanamura Sensei reminds us that at the higher levels, right, Uke must transform into Teki. I'll talk about that term later on. But in short, Teki is not just the opponent. Teki is the enemy, right? And this has to happen so that techniques can be pressure tested, right? All of these perspectives point to the same truth, right? The role of Uke is not lesser, right? It's the other half of mastery. We'll kind of keep coming back to these, right? Because I think these little snippets from the different soke, different teachers, are important, right? To ingrain, right? And if for no other reason, right? If I don't know, for those who think I might be making this stuff up, or there's no founding of whatever. Okay, if they need to hear that some soke's name is attached to it, and without that, they won't feel warm and fuzzy. Not that they're going to do the lessons anyway, right? I mean, we all do what we do, but anyway. But I'm going to keep coming back to them because they're critical pieces. Okay, and everything that I'm covering during this episode will keep coming back to one or more of these things. Okay, so I want to start by defining the roles, right, of Uke and Tori. And these are names that come out of the scrolls, and you hear them in a classical dojo quite a bit. But there's a lot of confusion wrapped around them, okay? As in, like, people can do everything from like mixing up the terms to just throwing really bad translations to them. Okay. Translations that, if we don't fix them, will at the very least limit our progress to certain levels, or inhibit things that we could be picking up or developing in the higher levels. Okay, so during this episode, we're gonna dig into the role of Uke, right, and why it's not just the the other guy, right, but really the other half of mastery. And I want to set this up by reminding you again of what some of our greatest teachers have said on the subject, right? So again, from Hatsumi Sensei, again, I'm just going to paraphrase those things down so that you get them if you're taking notes, whatever. Okay, so Hatsumi Sensei, among many things about the Uke, right, has said that Uke is the teacher. Okay, that doesn't mean that they're the sensei, but there is this Japanese phrase, right? Teacher is sensei, but Uke is the teacher, right? And there's a lot to be learned from that role for both Uke and Tori. And we have to remember that, like, we're not the other guy. Okay, sometimes we're the Uke, sometimes we're the Tori, and the lessons learned on both sides should feed the other. Okay. Again, the quote from Manaka Sensei, right, is that Uke is the one who preserves the form for the next generation. The Uke is charged with making sure that the authenticity, the power, and the legacy is passed on. That's pretty deep. Okay? E276 Sensei has said that uke is how you learn the feeling of Budo, right? When you're in that role of uke, right? Nagata Sensei, again, his quote was, "If you punch like a bad actor, you'll get bad taijutsu." Okay? And then Tanamura Sensei, uke transforms into teki at higher levels to pressure test techniques. Okay, I'm going to introduce uke and tori first to be clear about what we're talking about, and then this other term, this teki. My students, my upper level students, my Shinobi Kai people, have heard the term, right? But we need to make sure that we're clear about how that happens, and that we're not inadvertently being the enemy, right, to our partners learning. Okay? And again, I'm going to cross into other areas. One specifically that took me a long time to get my head wrapped around, because we often see these things from the perspective of the tori, right? The one learning the techniques. Hint, both people are learning the techniques. Okay? But I'm going to take a look at the Shuhari model from the uke's perspective, from the uke's side as well, right? So when it comes to these quotes from the different soke, right, all of these perspectives point to the same truth. Okay, uke is not lesser. It's not a lesser position. It's not, well, I'm sacrificing my training so that like he can work on his thing, and then it'll be my turn. Then it's it. No. It's not the lesser position. It's essential. Okay. So let's start by breaking down what we mean when we use the terms, when we say uke and tori. Okay. So uke, uke, right? I have heard it butchered in so many different ways. Yuki and just all kinds of things, right? Not a class on Japanese, right? But my Shinobi Kai people learn to pronounce things correctly, or not, but they're not allowed to butcher it, right? I don't care if they use the English instead, but they're going to use the Japanese. My joke in the dojo is, I listen to you butchering English all the time. You're not going to butcher this language. Okay? So, uke. Uke is normally seen as the receiver, right? It's a conventional translation, right? The receiver, okay? Uke, the term, it's made up of a kanji and a kana modifier, okay? The kanji itself, right, is for the verb ukeru, 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 right? This kanji, ukeru, means to receive, accept, also to undergo, right? In Japanese society, it implies acceptance, resilience, and willingness to take what comes, right? Whether it be an exam, an order from a superior, even hardship, right? In martial arts, uke is the one who receives the technique, not passively, but with awareness and intent. Okay, way too many people when they're playing the role of the uke. I'll talk about these much more in depth, but they do everything from like standing there like a friggin' lump on a log and they just stick out their limb or whatever, because it's his turn, right? Or my dog's not a happy camper at the moment, or she's guarding the house. I don't know what she's doing. Anyway, or they're worried about like the technique hurting, or they're worried about losing, or whatever. Okay. There's a sutemi, there's a sacrificial element to this that I'll get to here in a little bit, but it's not, this is not a lesser role. Okay? As a matter of fact, I've been taught by many of the ones I just quoted from, right? That the uke learns at least half, if not more, of the technique, the stuff that cannot be seen. All right. Right. So that's uke, quick, down and dirty, right? Next term is tori, Tori, right? Again, main kanji, kana modifier. Okay. The kanji for tori is this is the taker, right? People often use, and I did for the longest time because my teacher did, right? This the attacker defender dynamic. Okay. It will suffice in a pinch, but if we're really going to dive deep into these roles, specifically uke for this episode, if anybody's interested in going deeper into the role of the tori, other than just learning the technique, if there's enough interest, I'll do an episode on that. But for now, but the concept here, where uke is receiver, tori is the taker, right? This comes from the root verb toru, 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 and it means to take, to seize, to grasp. Okay. If anybody knows the term or terms, mushadori, musodori, kochodori, right? You normally see it as Dori. It's a transliteration. It's a linguistic twist on the pronunciation. Dori, right? Catch, seize, grasp, take. It's the same one, right? Oh, that'll put a twist on things. So, in everyday Japanese society, this is about responsibility and initiative, right? We just covered initiative in the last episode, last week, right? So, in training, tori is the one who seizes control of the situation, applying the technique. Okay. So, uke is not the victim. They're not while they are helping the tori learn the technique and other things, right? They're not necessarily the bad guy. That might be a different pill to swallow, right? Because again, most people see the tori as the defender, as the good guy. They see the uke as the attacker equals the bad guy. That's something that has to be dropped as we're approaching the upper levels of things. Again, I'll talk about that more as we go, right? So again, the uke is not the victim. The tori is not, quote unquote, the winner, right? These are two halves of one paradigm, each carrying very, very specific responsibility in doing everything from carrying the art and the techniques into the new generation, making sure that things are passed on authentically, to make sure that they're understood properly, all of those kind of things, right? So I remember when I was first started out with Sensei Hayes, Stephen Hayes, way back in the day, right? One of the first lessons I learned was that being a good attacker, being a good uke, is the most compassionate thing that you can do for your training partner. Right? And so that was drilled heavily, right? Anyway, so let me just take a little break here and see, James, anybody else sign
in? Dave said howdy. Jimmy said "Konbanwa."
Just a mixture of things.
Teneko Kito said good day. And Terrence is on and said, I'm ready to learn and advance.
Was Terrence on when I told everybody that if they like the episode, you're welcome very much? He was? Okay. Then if you're not, then it's all Terrence's fault. Terrence, just for your edification, this will not be a direct one-for-one on our class. Even though I did go back and review the class recording, it's one of the benefits of being in the inner circle, right? All the lessons are recorded. But just to go back to make sure that I hit the hot points, because we cover a lot. Holy cow! All right, so let me jump back into things then. James, how much is my dog coming across on everything?
She is.
She is. I apologize. I don't know why or what's going on outside or whatever, but she's this little thing, but has beagle, and so that they bark a lot, but has pit bull in her. And she's just like all muscle. Anyway, all right. So back into things. All right. So why uke matters? Let's talk about why uke matters. Okay. Why the uke? Right. Because again, just there's this, I don't know, everything from a sacrificial lamb to a lame duck approach to doing things. Right. So when I first began training, okay, my teachers drilled two things into me. And that was one, the most important thing you can do to maximize your training and the value you're getting out of training is to find a really good uke. And that means that you either find one and hold on, or you create one, right, by educating training partners to so they become good uke. And I don't mean these these people that just like their balance isn't right, they overextend themselves, all that kind of stuff. So it just makes the teacher look good, makes the training partner, makes the defender, the tori side of things, right, look really, really good. Not that kind of freaking sacrifice. Okay. But the first thing was the most important thing that you can do to maximize your training is to find a really good uke. And the second thing was that the most important thing you can do to help your training partner and to accelerate your own development is to become a good uke. Right? So again, I've alluded to these things, but the uke's role is not waiting for your turn. Okay. When you're playing the role of the uke, this is your turn. Okay? It's how you develop awareness, resilience, adaptability. Right? These are all seeds of higher level mastery. Right? So, again, a little bit deeper on these quotes that I pulled out, just to add a little bit more to them. Right? So, again, Hatsumi Sensei often said, "Uke wa sensei da." Right? Uke is the teacher. Right? His point was that the uke provides the conditions through which learning occurs. Okay. Without the uke's sincerity, proper timing, energy, all those things, right? Without those things, the kata is dead. It's just a step-by-step choreographed pattern. Makes everybody feel all warm and fuzzy, but the kata itself is dead. It is the uke's responsibility to bring the life to the kata. Okay? He also emphasized things like play is serious. Right? Everybody knows that he's always said, understand, good, play, right? But he's also emphasized play is serious. Okay? When the uke resists, adapts, or plays, right? This pressure forces growth. And each of these things are going to happen at different levels, right? We're going to walk through some different levels to understand what the uke's role and what their goals are or should be, and how they're helping the tori at each level. Okay. Now, in later years, right, I mean, things were more cut and dry earlier on. Because I started 1980, late 80, early 81. Um, Soke blurred the roles almost entirely, right? To where uke, tori, teki, these distinctions were dissolved. But you have to understand also that his distinctions blurred because his teaching changed as that core group of us progressed, right? And so I know how that caused a lot of confusion because at whatever point people jumped on and whatever form they saw the training take, they thought that that was the official way and that's the way it's always been done and things like that, right? Which is a whole different type of uke, right? Where you need to sacrifice your perceptions, right, for what really should be going on. Because all throughout those years, he reminded people that, you need to find a Shidoshi who can teach you the basics so you can understand what I'm doing. Of course, finding Shidoshi that we're not just doing the same thing, trying to cling on to whatever and not reinforcing basics and those kind of things became harder and harder as well. But anyway, right. So, but this all these things kind of echoed the point that I make and I remind folks about this whole idea of returning to zero, right? That other statements that he made as well, like forgetting technique or forgetting the kata, those kind of things, right? We have to be careful with the English language translations for a lot of these things, or if you're not a direct student or you don't understand the principles and concepts well enough to understand, or just basic reasoning, right? And this is not a knock on anybody, but ego likes to quote things back. Okay. I've mentioned this in the past that the human mind is an assumptive processor, right? It's not an observational or uh, cold data processor, right? It makes certain assumptions and then goes from there. Okay, so the reason why we have things like Mikyo and meditation and other tools like that is to make sure that we're keeping ourselves in check. We're keeping ego in check. We're keeping the processor in check, right? Because left to its own devices, it'll just run amok. Okay, so with the idea of forgetting the terms or forgetting the forget the kata, whatever. Okay, you can't forget something you never knew, and that's what would happen, right? People would hear Hatsumi Sensei say that, and then they would just like figure, well, what's the point? Okay, um, other people don't want to forget them because it is what gives them validation because they know these things that other people don't know. But the point with forgetting things is you can't forget something that you don't have. But what he's talking about is dropping things. And in Mikyo, we talk about name and form. Right? As soon as consciousness labels things, right, names the form, then this strange attachment and grasping and things like that happen. Right? And so you can't forget it once it's wired into muscle memory. What you can do is become detached from the basic forms, right? The models themselves. Okay, and this is even harder for teachers. Okay, those who are teaching, because you have to know them to teach them, to convey them, but you can't let those things muck up your skill proficiency at the level where you are or the level where you want to go. Okay, but that's bound to happen if teachers blur the lines between teaching and their own practice. What a lot of teachers will do is just practice or work on their stuff during classes that should be student focused. Again, not about that stuff. You just want to be mindful and be careful moving into those things, right? So, to Manaka Sensei's uh, quote or quote, where he emphasized that the uke is the key to learning form, right? In interviews, he has said that many Westerners made the mistake of seeing the uke as a quote unquote loser, right? The Tori's the winner, the uke is the loser, right? They're supposed to lose the fight, right? And like, who wants to put like tons of energy and effort and awareness on the fact that, on the loser side, right? You're obviously making all these mistakes. Of course, you're going to lose. Yeah, but the uke should be learning why that downfall takes place. What is it about the technique that creates conditions for the enemy, for the opponent, that sets them up until there's that kodomo, that crux, that linchpin, that when it hits that tipping point, there's just this cascading crash, right? But again, there's this mistake, right, of seeing the uke as the loser, right? But in the Koryu model, Koryu, old school, right, model, the uke is the one who is entrusted with preserving the form for the next generation, preserving the power, the energy, the authenticity, right, for the next generation. Okay. So for him, the uke embodies responsibility for correct transmission. Okay. And so, again, in what I'm going to be hinting at or alluding to throughout this, and something I'm going to mention a book that actually Terrence brought up to me, that was written by a peer of mine coming up through the levels, that points to the reality that kata is mutually beneficial. Okay, both sides contribute equally, and both sides benefit equally while they're playing each individual role. And we have to remember that for wholeness, sometimes we're the tori, sometimes we're the uke, and this is a back and forth kind of thing. What we learn as the tori, right, is the defender, right? Then we go to the uke side, right, and we're like, oh, well, that's what that feels like. But could that be done better, differently, right? Is this because I don't feel like I have it here? They have it here, they don't. Okay, being critical, right, and then thinking about that, and then taking it back over to the tori side, right, and then okay, so was my uke nagash what it should have been? Because like I really didn't. What's that tori definition? I really didn't take him. Right? So what if I move to this angle? What if I change the timing a little bit? Whatever, okay? And then we go back to the uke side, and our partner's doing that. And we're like, oh, okay, that's better, that's worse, that's whatever, right? And it's just back and forth play as we learn things. Because as the tori, we learn how to perform the moves, right? The what and the how. But as the uke, we learn the why, right? When, timing wise, where, angle wise, all that kind of stuff, right? It's very interesting. Okay, this is why it's not the same as most fighting arts. Okay, we're just going to slug it out and count points, right? Or look for a knockout. Okay? So again, back to Ishizuka Sensei's point, right? Where he said to be uke is to learn the feeling of budo, right? I've often mentioned this quite a bit, right? In Ishizuka Sensei's dojo, we were reminded on a regular basis that every time you come to the dojo, you risk dying, which is why people would come to train with Ishizuka Sensei after very often after people had been to a Kasemzaguri seminar or whatever, and he'd point out Isuka but they wouldn't stay in the dojo very long. Okay. Because Isuka Sensei's teaching style was infamous for what we could just sum up as tough ukemi, right? He wanted students to truly feel how techniques break balance, lock joints, or crush structure. Okay? Not where the uke sacrifices and just kind of goes along with things, but how it happens. Yeah. Okay. So he saw the uke as the one who absorbs the embodied knowledge, right? How it feels to be on the receiving end. Right? This is what I was taught by my teachers early on in the Hayes camp, the Malmstrom camp, those kind of things, right? What the uke is experiencing, right? Because if we're looking at something absolutely related to self-defense, and for a lot of you, right, that are my Leos, security people, bouncers, whatever, right? We need to be intimately clear and familiar with the use of force doctrine. Okay. And so I need to understand what techniques are low level force and control, what are mid, what are high, what will maim this person or worse. Okay. Because if I overstep those, and it's different for each realm, civilian, security, law enforcement, military, if I overstep those, I'm going to jail. Okay. Or worse. Okay. So again, how it feels to be on the receiving end, and then the uke carries that forward when becoming Tori, right? I've explained that back and forth kind of thing. This is important. And again, what that back and forth looks like at different levels of training is important to understand as well. Right? We'll get to that here shortly. Okay. So let's revisit Nagato Sensei's quote, right? Because he often stressed realistic attacking. Isuka Sensei did too. I remember taking a student to Japan once, and Isuka Sensei and the senior Japanese black belts spent quite a deal of time laughing at him, at other students that were doing the same thing, and they would laugh and go, "Who's your teacher?" And he'd point, and they go, "We know who your teacher is." So, question: why are you making this mistake, but your teacher doesn't make this mistake? Okay, kind of leave things open, right? But I had a different student there, different trip, and he was called to be the uke, and he threw this punch, and Isuka Sensei would just kind of shifted, stop the fist. No, again, right? Punch comes, shift, stop. No. And then he would look around, and I remember him looking dead into my student's eyes and saying, I don't need 1,000 or 2,000-year-old secrets to defend against shit. Okay? Your job is to make my life interesting. Your job is to attack correctly, realistically, to take me. Okay? My job and these techniques are designed for worst case scenarios, not shit, right? Now, my students go through a transitional period at certain points. Okay. For instance, when somebody starts as a white belt and we do wrist grab techniques, wrist grab defenses, I just let the uke come out and just grab them by the wrist, right? But at a certain point, when we're discussing them being grabbed by somebody who's bigger, stronger, or accidentally or on purpose catches things just right, that they don't just grab the wrist, they grab the wrist assembly, and in a way that also locks the elbow and the shoulder. Okay. And then I proceed to teach how this is done, because when we grab somebody, we don't grab a flesh bag, we grab the skeleton and we immobilize the joints, because it's like every other technique. Okay. Lock the joints in the limb to seize the spine to immobilize the feet. Okay. That's the chain. A wrist grab takes the feet, prevents the spine from adapting. Okay. And then I go through this. Right? Those of you who are on audio only, I'll try to explain this, but for most people, the wrist is anywhere in this narrow part of the base of the forearm. Okay. But the wrist, okay, is this grouping of marble-ish, rough marble-looking bones that attach the metacarpals to the radial ulna junction, right? And so if we just grab what most people think of as the wrist, okay, you can grab your own wrist right now, okay? You can move your hand around. You can twist it in place. If you can separate the idea that this is all one fixed piece from the fact that you've got soft tissue wrapped around two bones, you can move the flesh bag. So this person does not have me. Okay. The techniques, the Teihodoki, hand escaping, hand release techniques, are designed for when things are locked. Okay. And so we have to learn at a certain point that there is a connection between a couple of bones at the base of the forearm, wrist, just before the hand, that if we lock that, it minimizes or prevents the elbow and the shoulder unit from moving. Now we have them. And so the very first move in Teihodoki techniques has to be to unlock that point, not to get him off of me, not to do what everybody sees as the cool move. This is part of the 90% of a technique that most people can't see when the teacher's demonstrating something. This is part of the 90% that I describe to students, and sometimes there's eye rolling or nodding like they understand, right? And then they go back to doing the same shit, right? But often students are like, yeah, you talk too much. Just tell me where to put my foot. Tell me what to do with my hand. Okay, yeah, do that. Okay? So again, on purpose or by accident, they can end up grabbing things in a way where I'm not going to be able to move my hand around and do these little fine motor skill kind of things, right? So the attacking, again, it starts at a certain place, but then the uke has to grow in skill and understand how to grab clothing, body parts, whatever, in a way that actually creates a problem that the Tori has to solve. Otherwise, why bother learning these proven, time-tested, ancient secrets or whatever that were developed by people who studied warfare for 1,000 years, 2,000 years, or whatever? Why bother, right? Do what everybody else says. Just put some fucking gloves on, jump in a ring, and fight like everybody else. Right? The reason is there's more to it. And if we're actually studying something like Ninjutsu, like Budo or Ninpo Taijutsu, where the goal is to overcome superior odds, overcome overwhelming odds, right? You are not the biggest, baddest motherfucker on the sorry, this guy showed up and You're not even the same size, let alone, or you're not bigger than him, let alone the same size, right? And so, again, right, Nagata Sensei's phrase, right? If you punch like a bad actor, you will get bad taijutsu. That goes for grabbing, that goes for kicking, that goes for whatever. And not everything that everybody does out there is good. So Hatsumi Sensei very often would say that you need to understand a good technique from a bad technique just by looking at it from across the room. You need to understand one that even if it's rough or the student's still working on things or the demonstrator or somebody from a different art or whatever is doing things like, okay, if we add these missing elements, we can tighten that up. Cool, right? And the difference between that and looking at one where, if I do that, I'm going to freaking die. That's just, I don't give a shit that it works in somebody's dojo. Okay? So again, for him, the uke's job was to attack with sincerity, right? Not movie punches, but with authentic strikes. Okay. That means striking through, not pulling short, not deviating next to somebody, right? Punching as though you were taking the person off their feet, even if you're training at slow speeds. Okay? I often ask my students, right? What is the uke's job? If they're my uke, right? What's your job? Well, it's to throw a punch. No, it isn't. It is to punch me through the target. Okay. Sometimes I have to ask, will I hit you? Yeah. Here's your chance. Okay. But your job is not to throw a punch. Your job is to land a punch in a way that breaks the defender's form, breaks their kamae, breaks their timing, breaks their plans, breaks their ability to escape. Okay? Just like when the tori delivers a punch, their job is to break the balance, break the kamae, break the plan, break the mindset of the uke. Okay, we're not. When I say not movie punches, what I mean is they line up the camera just right. We're going to throw a punch that misses the guy by a mile, but he's going to play along with it. That teaches us nothing or very little about surviving actual combat using this art, using this system. Okay? So he also modeled resilience, right? His uke training, right? And the ukemi that went along with it, right? Showed how to take punishment, to adapt and keep going, right? Exactly the resilience that we talk about often. I remember going to Japan one time. I wasn't in country for more than 2 days, 3 days, maybe. And I had gone to a Nagata Sensei class and got to be uke. I will always volunteer to be uke, right? You just learn more that way. But came in, he did uke nagash, and then he did one of these kakushigeri, these hidden kicks, these cross-side stomp kicks, right? To the inside of my lead knee. And the knee buckled. I'm sure I ended up with a slight meniscal tear. For the rest of my almost now 2 weeks in country, I had the Japanese equivalent of salon pass things on my knees and all kinds of things because I was not going to class. Okay, I didn't sit out the rest of that class. Right, I had to let my training partners know I'm gonna need to slow this down just a little bit because I need to be mindful of alignment between the femur and the tib fib assembly through the knee joint, or I'm not sure that it's going to stay together. Okay? But learning to be a good uke, okay? You'll see as I round it out in the upper levels, right? It involves the ability to keep going when you've been injured. Okay? Oh, and that's just not physical. It's also mentally, emotionally, right? I can usually tell what somebody's ukemi and what kind of uke they are physically in the dojo by just listening to the way they talk about the way life treats them or people in life or whatever. Okay? And I was that way too. I was taught to be that way. I modeled people in my life and my teachers, these teachers, this training taught me to be different, not to act different, to be different. Right? Because shit happens. Sometimes shit is generated, and sometimes people will harm you. They have no idea that they're even doing it because they don't even pay attention to how they live their own fucking lives. Okay, so there's a lot more to being an uke than just throwing a punch. Okay, and then to wrap this up with Tanemuro Sensei's quote about the role of the uke in pressure testing technique. Right, he's written a lot about this. In the Genbukan curriculum, the uke is explicitly trained to resist at advanced levels in becoming what's known as a teki. Okay, the enemy, right? To act like, even at slow speeds, to act like the person who doesn't give a shit what you know. Okay, the person that is there to remind you, where the uke transitions to teki in that phase of training. It is this person's responsibility to teach you that the only friggin' person in the entire universe who's going to let you do your techniques to them is your uke at a certain level. Okay. So, Tanemuro Sensei, when he's describing these things, right, he frames the uke as the compassionate adversary, someone who offers resistance not to win, but to ensure that their partner can pressure test without delusion. Right? They're not there at that point to allow mistakes to slide. Okay. He also connects uke training to Shinken Shobu, right? Serious life and death combat. Okay. And what he says is without the uke giving their all, the training loses its combative edge. This doesn't degenerate into like bullshit game playing stuff, right? But it's to keep things honest, right? And this circles back to the earlier lessons by other teachers about preserving the lineage and the authenticity of the training and the life of the kata, all of those things, right? The kata are the uke being the teacher. Okay. So before we take a look at the shuhari, right, this traditional progression path that I know I did for the longest time, right, that most see as just for the tori, the person learning the technique. Um, we have to look at it from the uke side because the uke is learning the technique too, right? They're not just learning how to die gracefully like you see in a lot of karate things. Anyway, before we do that, let me just shift over here a little bit. James, any questions, comments, complaints, pissing, moaning, bitching, whatever pop up? I see we had more people and then like they dropped off because maybe this isn't entertaining or maybe it's stabbing people in the ego booby.
The only thing is Richard Demio said good evening.
Hey, Richard. All right. That's it. No questions, no comments, no. People usually say that kind of stuff, but just like, Nick, that's it. I'm done. Going back to watching cat videos. All right. James, do you have any thoughts about things that pop up in class with regards to the uke? Like trading one out who won't get it, so you can actually work on what you need to work on.
Yeah, I think that's probably can be a difficult thing, especially as you move up in rank and you're trying to work on other skills and you need that uh, that level of commitment, I guess.
That
Like
life. Yeah.
there's I mean, because I've run into the same thing where there's certain people I have no doubt will absolutely punch me in the face if I don't move at the very least, and there's other ones that I know probably won't or just won't, and it invokes a whole different feeling as the receiver of it, that whether I need to move or not move, because I can feel the lack of intent, and sometimes you literally don't even need to move because you know it's going to stop.
You know,
Just
and I know we can talk about, like, uke being a bad uke or whatever, but just like with a lot of things in people's lives, sometimes people who are playing the role of the uke, they don't know that they're doing certain things, right? The number of people that are surprised because I said their fist moves like this, uncontrolled heat-seeking missile or whatever, right? Did I do that? Nope. I just decided to call you out on something you absolutely do not do. Um, but it's a self-awareness kind of thing, right? Um, but we have to make sure that we have the right uke for us, right? They have to be able to take ukemi, right, at certain levels. Otherwise, you're going to constantly stop at a certain point, right? So they're safe. But what do I teach the Shinobi Kai people? Every once in a while, you need to test your uke and their commitment, right? And so the way to do that is don't move, right? Because they may be willing to commit to the punch, and they think that they're in full commitment mode, but subconsciously or consciously, they're counting on you moving. And so they can, here's that movie punch, right? They can act out the punch because they know it's not really going to land. But as soon as you don't move, what happens? Right? It just like skids to a halt, or they veer off because intentionally or unintentionally, something inside won't let them hit. Right. And what my teachers used to call, what they used to blame it on or connect it to, and I just tended to do that as one possibility, is, we were taught as very young children that nice people don't hit. But I say this in class, right? That only works. There's two conditions where that's not true. One is a self-defense situation, and two is in class. Because you can't learn this stuff without doing it. So as long as you're in contradiction with mommy or grandma's lesson, training is going to be stifled. That doesn't mean you need to become a sociopathic, cold, heartless ass, right? But part of the ways that we ferret out these things that are inhibiting or limiting our progress in every area of life is somebody has to call you out on it, right? Otherwise, you may not even know that it's operating. So I don't blame anybody for, like, those kind of things where they don't even know they're doing it, right? But the ones who absolutely know that they're skittish, right? Um, Even worse than that, the ones that like derive pleasure from applying a technique to everybody else, but won't even allow themselves to be touched lightly because they're, you know, what's that old Chinese saying? General with a iron fist usually has a glass jaw. Yeah. So anyway, what else you got?
well,
Have you consciously, or not consciously, overtly or um, subtly fired uke? Like there's certain people that you won't team up with, or um, you'll only team up for certain types of techniques or training, and then you'll find somebody else when you become more critical about like who you choose when you're working on different things.
yeah, there's sometimes that you just have to do that, or as soon as we need to find somebody, you just have to like you already know generally if you're in a regular class who's best, and just go like grab a hold of somebody like I need you, or I need you to. Sometimes it's just that going up to somebody that can give you what you need for that, and be like, I need you for this because I'm working on this specific aspect of it or whatnot.
Yeah.
I know you can give that to me. But,
Yeah. The a good example of that would be if you're working on are you Nidon? You're Nidon, right? So you're
yes.
working on Sandan stuff, right? Which is lock, hold, and throw counters, escapes from locks, holds, and throws. Well, if you don't team up with somebody who, as the uke, can apply
Hmm.
good, solid locks, holds, and throws, then you're going to develop a false sense of confidence
Sure.
because they're not giving you anything that's going to be difficult to escape from, right? One of the reasons why was it Spring Camp or was it Daikomyosai when I had Josh Bloom in to do he did two breakout sessions on Taekwondo style kicks.
Right.
Was that spring?
Yes.
Yeah. So one breakout session, he taught people how to do the kick properly as would be done in that art, right? Not because we're teaching students to do that kick, but so that they can like do the kick to replace, we're adding to ninjutsu or whatever, right? Although in the upper levels, but the reason why I had him do that was so that people would be better uke because if they're throwing a shit move that we're calling a taekwondo kick, um, they're throwing something that the tori is never going to see. Not that they have to worry about anyway, right? And so the second um, breakout, I think, was he was pointing out the weaknesses in that kick
Hmm.
and mistakes that certain people make or tells that can often happen or whatnot, because that was the other half. People want to learn how to defend against things, but unless you're willing to train with somebody who is good at that art, or the uke that you choose can at least do the punches right, the kick, whatever it is that you're defending against, you're not going to learn it the way you need to against somebody who's just really fucking good, right, at throwing that kind of kick or that delivering that kind of throw or whatever. That's just no matter what somebody wants to believe, it's just not true, right? And so anyway, that plays back into Nagato Sensei's kind of thing, right? If uh, you can't do the proper attack, right? If you're a bad actor, then you're going to develop bad taijutsu, not just in yourself, but in your uke, right? Not in the uke, in the tori, right? In your training part, the defender, because um, they're not going to see that. Well, they might, but by that point, they should be able to tell the difference between a really good one and a shit one, right? Like Ishizuka Sensei said, I don't need 1,000 or 2,000-year-old secrets to defend against shit. But at the same time, um, when we need to pressure test, then somebody's going to know the difference between whether their skill set resides in soft training or when they can actually discern the space available. They know the weakness of given maneuvers and whatnot, and they can apply the principles and concepts. Or will they be like 90% of the rest of the martial arts world? And you know this. I mean, you were in other martial arts where somebody goes through the entire freaking program, and then when they're sparring, they only do one or two punches, one or two kicks, whatever. They've got their go-to things, and everything else just goes to hell in a handbasket. Right? That's not been my experience with the master teachers, and that's not been the standards that I've been held responsible for. So anyway, anybody else pipe up any other comments or things pop in while we were dialoguing?
Uh, Technico, asked, would the street be the last uke in that last test?
It's the only test that matters, but yeah. I know some of you've heard this story before, but it was one of the early stages of when I realized that like things were things were integrated into the system. Um, where like this attack came out of nowhere, and I whipped this mushadori on somebody, took them down, and all set and whatnot. And either way, long story short, I'm walking away from the incident, and I had this sudden realization that like I didn't have to think about that move. I didn't choose the technique. Like the technique was kind of chosen for me. Everything just kind of fit together. It was more of an intuitive insight. And like that, I remember my teachers describing that at this level, this is what happens, right? If you're still thinking about it, if you still have to remember, if you, whatever, you're not there yet. And I remember having one, and I'm not this kind of guy. Most of the students know this. I'm not this kind of guy, but I had this moment, my heart jumps and I went, yes, right? Like I got it, right? But that was like way after the fact. I wasn't like all, jazzed during the technique. I wasn't trying to do move number 7 and lock number 22 and whatever. So is it? Yeah, but I don't recommend anybody jump to that point, right? There's lots of things we can do in the dojo to prep for that. Okay? Although in one of the Hayes books, there was a litmus test, or not a litmus test. It was a way to circumvent the entire training process, right? James, are you laughing? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, it's a 4-step process for using the street, right, as your test, and to circumvent the entire process. And so, step 1, you identify an area of negative psycho-emotional energy, right? Any bar will do, right? And then step 2 is you go there and you engage someone who looks like life is not treating them well, right? Um, in a way that would trigger a negative response. Call their mom a name, right? Step 3, do your best at defending against the onslaught that person is going to send in your direction. And step 4 is to check out of the hospital and continue to repeat steps 1 through 4 until step 4 is no longer necessary. Or you could find a really good teacher who can take you through that process with training drills and all these other things, right? But yeah, I mean, it's a part of the process, but it's the end result, and that there is no do-over. And we have to make sure that we're talking about the same kind of situation where it's not like, an ego slapping smacking kind of thing, and then the winner gets to talk smack tomorrow and the other person gets to talk smack tomorrow, but that smack is like wanting a rematch or whatever. Okay. There's been more than and just in our local area in the last couple of years, there's been several defenders or people with chips on their shoulders who would like to claim self-defense, who are now sitting in jail. But in 2 of the instances that come to mind right now that actually happened on the same block, same corner, right? The other combatant, not in jail, not at home with their family either. They died. Okay? One was damn near decapitated by a plate glass window, and the other one had their skull crushed when they I don't know if they stumbled, they got knocked to the ground or whatever, and hit their skull against the curb. And yeah, the so-called defender, don't know, wasn't there, right? Don't know how it started, but this is not the kind of self-defense combative kind of thing we're talking about. Is it combat? Sure, but the reason each individual was there was in the 4-step process and it was over stupid shit. Okay, things that if we asked the question before we stepped up, is this willing to die? Am I willing to die for this thing? Because people don't think that way, do they? They think about being the winner. They think about teaching this other person a lesson. Not, is this worth dying for? Because that's a huge potential when we're talking about the street, even if it's not intentional. As for these two guys that just got involved in a fist fight, the two guys that caused the final part of the chain where their opponent died, didn't intend for anybody to die. Doesn't matter. I mean, I guess in the grand scheme of things it does, but wearing an orange jumpsuit, I guess, is better than wearing a black suit. Right? Taking that long nap. So, anyway, anything else, James?
No, not right now.
Okay, cool. Let's jump into that. I'll jump back into this, I guess. Okay, so Shuhari. A lot of you are familiar with this. For those of you who are not, right, we'll get you caught up here quickly. For those of you who are, it's just going to be a quick review, right? Shuhari is a 3-stage progression framework. Comes out of classical martial arts. Okay? Shu means to copy or preserve. People see it as the beginner level of training. No henka, no variations, nothing that like that is allowed. Your job, your role as the tori is to copy your teacher. Okay. And you don't graduate that stage until you can duplicate what they're teaching or what they're demonstrating the way they're doing it. Okay. It's copy and preserve. Okay. Again, that should kind of stand out that, okay, preserve. Oh, okay. That's what he was talking about with the uke being responsible for that. Okay. But doesn't the tori help to preserve things? No. The tori will get the techniques right when the uke provides the right experience. Otherwise, the technique gets fucked up. Okay. So shu is learning the form of the technique, right? Ha means to break. Okay. And so this is where variation lies. This is what most people think of as this is where the tori or the defender, the winner, right, comes up with alternate versions or variations and whatnot to wipe out the uke and whatnot, right? But the uke also participates in form breaking, okay, to maximize the learning. And then ri, or ri means to transcend, to go beyond. Okay, this is where the forgetting the name of the kata, that kind of stuff resides. Okay, so again, is it deeper than that? Yes, but if you go to the YouTube channel or you go to just about anywhere, right? I've got plenty of stuff describing these things much deeper. Whiteboard Wednesdays, all kinds of things. Okay, so but what I want to do here is I want to take a look at the Shuhari path as it relates to the uke, right? So the Shuhari path of the uke. Okay, so at the shu level, right, learning the form, what the uke needs to be focused on, what their goals should be focused on, is delivering correct, authentic attacks. Not fast, right? So we're doing soft training, not just for the tori, right, but also for the uke, right? Not fast, but accurate, okay? On the path. The limb is moving correctly the way the given attacker that we're dealing with, right? Of course, in the very beginning, it's all this ski, right? Most people, they do what they think a ski is, but their ski is not technically correct. Okay. what that means is that by the time the body gets out where it's supposed to be, and we think it's supposed to be that way, well, of course, the Tori can do the technique and put the person down because there's no solidity to that kamae. Ski no kamae. Right? So what is ski? Right? When I say ski no kamae, what is the kamae at ski? At ski is a forward ichimonji, a forward seigan. Okay. At the end of ski, right? If you miss, should take one major movement, one minor movement to put you back in a safe position. Right? Should be able to pull your hips back to your rear leg, and your hand opens back up again. Okay, so the ski position, that strike position, is a forward reclining ichimonji or seigan no kamae. Okay? And we must still be able to move freely from there. Okay? So again, from the shoe level, right? If your punches or grabs aren't real, your partner develops false confidence. So it's not compassionate. It's disrespectful. Okay? I know I had different teachers. Okay. At this level, we develop ukemi not as gymnastics, but as survival movement. Okay. We learn how to take ukemi. We get good at the different ukemi movements, break falls, rolls, those kind of things, right? Way too many people in intermediate and upper levels are taking ukemi in a position that's barely different than a fetal position. And they can't understand why they don't roll all the way over. Right? One of the reasons for doing soft training for the uke, right, is so they can practice feeling the direction, accepting that, relaxing into it, and going. Right? The kata, if you don't already know this, and I think a lot of you do, there's 3 levels of transmission for every kata. Okay, at the first level of transmission, not only are both people training, the uke is helping the tori do their move, but the kata is done in a way that the uke can take ukemi. In the upper levels, that is systematically taken away from the uke. Once the tori learns how somebody can take ukemi to save themselves, then they learn to disrupt the taking of ukemi, to stop the taking of ukemi, right, at the beginning and middle stage of the lock holder throw. And then the tori has to learn the last second kind of taking, where the uke is well into ukemi. They're taking ukemi, right? And so we do things to exaggerate their ukemi. Okay. Person's going into a roll, or they're sending their body over so they can land on muscle and whatnot. So since we can't disrupt it, right, and we're not in a position where we can maybe kick them or whatever, we either slam them harder into the ground, so the ground that they meet the ground at the wrong time. Okay, so they're prepping for consciously, unconsciously, and so we just help them meet the ground sooner and harder. Or as they take ukemi, we let's say I'm doing a throw, or I'm doing a gyakute or something, right? And they take ukemi, and just as they're hitting the ground, right, I lean back or I pull up on the arm that I have. And so what that does is it whips them into a different position. They land on their side. I'm now behind them, and I can either stomp on their rib cage, stab them in the spine, or one of the exposed organs at the rear. Right. So the point is that the ideal is that they can't take ukemi, but even if they take ukemi, that it's not taken the way it serves them best. Okay, that kind of thing. But in the early stages, right, the uke is working on perfecting ukemi, rolls, break falls, leaps, all that kind of stuff, right? So that they can, one, help the tori execute technique all the way through, right, without getting hurt, without themselves getting hurt, um, and uh, and things are done slowly so that the tori is practicing one side, the uke is practicing taking ukemi, right? But again, not as a gymnastics movement, but as a survival movement, okay? Because you'll see as we move to another stage, uh, and we're not doing things from a static start, right? That we're doing things from a moving thing, then the space is always changing. The landing point for the ukemi is always changing. And so there has to be more adaptability. But in the beginning, first level transmission, the kata is done so the tori, not just so the tori can complete the movements, but so that the uke can take ukemi. Okay? And the other thing that the uke needs to learn at this shu level is to sacrifice ego. Okay? It's not about winning. It's not about resisting. It's not about proving that the technique doesn't work. Right? Yeah, but what if he, as who used to say this? It probably still does. Noguchi Sensei, right? People would ask Noguchi Sensei, yeah, but what if he does this thing? What if he, right? What if I, Noguchi Sensei would just smile and go, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. At this stage, it doesn't matter because you can't do the damn technique anyway. You're asking questions about something you can't do. How about if you prioritize and put things in the right order? Okay? Until you can do it, okay? Because those questions belong at the hot stage where things get broken and adjusted. And what if he does this midstream? Well, okay. Well, if you can't do the whole damn thing from beginning to end, which is why most people like default to Henka. Henka's most people's saving grace, right? Well, that wasn't going to work out, so I did this thing anyway. Well, why is it that 99.8% of the time you always end up fucking doing Henka? It looks to me like you can't do the damn model itself. Okay. Anyway, little story here from the Shoshi Malmstrom dojo, right? Some of you guys have heard this story before, but I remember going to New Jersey one time, Red Bank, at the YMCA down there where Jack Hoban was doing regular monthly seminars or classes. And so he and Shoshi Malmstrom would alternate doing seminars in each other's backyard, so to speak, right? So he'd have Shoshi Malmstrom up to his place, to the place where he normally taught, and the like once or twice a year, and then Shoshi Malmstrom would have Jack Hoban come down to Atlanta to do things. It was just this kind of reciprocal kind of thing, right? And so the seminar that I'm thinking of at the moment was one on protecting others. Okay, so lots of cool dynamic stuff. Definitely not starter level kind of training. So what we were learning was things like inserting ourselves between the attacker and the intended victim, friend, or just a stranger, that it's obvious this person is in over their head. They don't know how to defend themselves or whatever. So since we've been training all this time, we either insert ourselves in there or we insert ourselves into the situation by, getting his attention, those kind of things. Sometimes you couldn't insert yourself in where you could break it up. So what you'd have to do is just snatch this guy out of freaking space and he'd end up on the ground and whatever, right? And so I kept being called as the uke. And at a certain point, man, my body was feeling it. I was just like 5 minutes. I could just have a 5-minute reprieve. Okay. So it was actually after this one technique, I went, grabbed my bottle of water and kind of hid in a dark corner. And it wasn't really hiding. I was just like putting a whole bunch of bodies and faces between my teacher and me. I just needed a break. And he goes to call up this one uke. There was one person to be an uke or whatever. And he goes, oh, wait. Where's Jeff? Where's my guy? Right. So I come up and my ass whipped into the stage a couple more times and stuff. And he sends everybody off to train. I said, can I ask you a question? He goes, yeah, what's up? I piss you off? He goes, no, why? I'm like, I've been the UK for this whole damn thing, except for maybe like the first 2 or 3 techniques you did. He goes, yeah, of course. Your ukemi's fucking phenomenal. I'm going to break most of these people in the room. Yeah. No, you didn't piss me off, right? You don't want me to be used as an UK? Stop being so damn good at your ukemi. All right, fair enough. Guess I'll see you in a couple of minutes. So it was just one of those things, right? And I'm not saying this to ring my bell. It was or to yay me kind of thing, right? But it spoke to. I spent a lot of time, right? Because as a solo training student, right, way too many damn people lament about not having training partners. You don't need training partners to practice Come Maestra. I have a list of 50 some things that the solo training student could practice or work on and not need a training partner, right? Just ukemi, all kinds of stuff, right? I just drilled that stuff, right? And it wasn't because I liked it. It was because it was necessary. Okay? And it was necessary because my teachers told me. 1, find a really good uke. 2, become a really good uke. Okay. So again, at this stage, the uke's goals are simple. Okay. And I'm going to cover more of these or this more during this week's Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. But the key goals, there's 4 of them, right, at this stage. 1, deliver proper attacks. 2, simulate real cause and effect reactions. That means when that fist hits, ribs, whatever, okay, to understand deeply and be able to simulate the actual physiological response to that strike, to that area, at that angle, to that depth. Because there's really only 2 choices for your tori, right? There's 3 choices, right? Find another uke. But if they're going to use you, then they've got 2 choices. Or you have 2 choices. The uke's 2 choices are simulate the impact and damage correctly, or understand that your tori has to create the reaction. Either simulate it or have it created. I promise one feels a whole lot better than the other. Okay, so that's 2. Number 3, learn to feel the technique's effects. Pay attention to what it's doing to your body. Okay? That is the way you learn the why of the technique. Right? Hatsumi Sensei has always said, the kata is not the lesson. The kata is only an indicator about where you begin, right? But the tori, learning the moves, as the tori, I have no freaking idea other than what I see out here with where he's moving and all that. I have no idea what this is doing to his body to limit his ability or prevent him from coming back at me, right? And if I'm supposed to be learning this stuff so that I can shut down an attacker in 10 seconds or less, 4 moves or less, it is imperative that I learn physiologically what this is doing to a human body. Okay? I heard from a teacher from a completely different martial art way back in the day, but it absolutely crosses over. Said, your job is not to win or lose. Stop thinking about winning or losing. right? Your job is to learn how to break down a human body as quickly as possible in as few moves as possible so that it can't come at you in a way that's dangerous. That doesn't mean you have to kill him, but that is what we're learning. And the way to learn how that happens and as to whether or not the uke and the gash is actually doing something. No, but again, at the first stage, at the shoe level, I'm not there to correct my training partner because he's learning the moves, the steps, and I'm learning what that does. It'll be in subsequent levels where we learn too much, right amount, too little, on time, too early, too late. Right? Not here. Okay. So deliver proper attacks, simulate real cause and effects reactions, learn to feel the technique's effects, and develop safe flowing ukemi. So you don't get hurt. Because things only get more exciting from here. Okay. So before I move into the Ha stage, the middle stage, breaking the form, that kind of thing, questions, comments, James, anything pop up?
Kevin Hartwell just said, my biggest frustration is training with people that couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag.
Okay. Are they your level? Are you training at their level? Because again, this goes back to finding the right uke for the level that you're working on, or sacrificing your wants and needs if you're the uke for somebody that's not at that level. Again, I don't know your context. So I understand the frustration. I do. Right? But it comes down to taking control of like Terrence. Right now, Terrence is nurturing. He's been training with somebody for a couple of months, and most of that has been on making sure that that person has the skills necessary to help Terrence work on what he's working on. So for the last couple of months, he's been in teacher mode. Right. So again, I don't know your context. I understand the frustration. Right? One of the frustrations I have when I go to Japan is looking around, looking at the eyes of practitioners who have high level belts and should be absolutely fucking thankful that they found a martial art where they could get promoted to high level rank. And based on what I see in their eyes, they don't have a violent bone in their body. I understand. Okay? And that is why I've done other lessons, I've done other things where it is absolutely imperative that we counter mom and grandma's lessons in early childhood, one of which was don't be greedy. In the personal development realm, you absolutely must be greedy. Okay? And I don't mean stealing other people's shit and all that. I mean being self-centered to make sure that you get what you need to progress to the level you're trying to get to. Okay? So, yeah, no, I get it. Okay? But remember, there's a bunch of these character traits that go hand in hand with these things. And the one I'm pointing to right now is responsibility. Okay? You are going to go through a bunch of people until you can find a good uke. Finding one's hard enough. Finding several, shit. Creating one, hard enough. Which is why I started a training group that turned into a school. What better way to train uke, right? And to find them than to create the hub. that was not done because I didn't set out to be a teacher. I didn't set out to have a martial arts school, nothing like that, right? I was told by my teachers that I needed bodies and I needed to find good training partners, good uke. Okay? And if I couldn't find them, create them. So again, James and I talk about this on a regular basis, right? It's not about something I wanted. It was about something that was necessary. And it was expedient. And in spite of myself, I ended up here. But we do what we do. Okay? Anybody could go to Isu Sensei's dojo and find really good uke really fast. The problem in that environment was that most people didn't stay. Because other things come with that. Right? Like having really, really high level skills, but being in an arena or being in a space with a teacher and seniors that, or where you had to get really comfortable with being uncomfortable, and you had to just understand that you were going to hear no a lot. Your technique was going to be picked apart mercilessly. Because they weren't there to make you feel good. Their job was to turn you into that demon that when the attacker showed up, he would know in an instant that he was in the wrong fucking place. Okay. So, to your point, again, I get it, but I don't need uke who can fight their way out of a white paper bag. I need uke that can give me what I need so that I can. Not looking for fighters. I'm looking for partners. Okay? And if they can't, then I need to teach them how. Then if they can't or they won't, then I need to replace them. If they can't, that's a training opportunity, which means I'll need to develop some skills to be able to convey things to somebody, keep my frustration in check. If I won't replace them, now that's on me. Okay? If I'm going to be frustrated because of convenience, got to be careful. Okay? So, but I get it, dude. I absolutely get it. Okay? What else, James?
Well, that's it for the moment.
Okay. On to ha. And no, I'm not laughing at you. We're not talking about horses either. Bajutsu. All right, so at the hot level, right? That's where Henke usually comes in, those kind of things, right? So at the hot level, the focus shifts outward, okay? It focuses on not just helping your partner get better, right? But this is where the stress testing starts to come in, kind of, right? So the uke starts to call the tori out on, I know you're doing uke nagash, but I can take my arm away from you. I mean, it's just, I can, everything from I can see you doing it to, here's a for instance, right? One of the lessons that my students get in our module 3, wherever you happen to have kosei in your curriculum, whatever. In ours, it's in module 3. We're dealing with preemptive intercepting and the moguri dori concept from Kukishinden, where you're submerging in, those kind of things, right? Many, many, many people screw up kosei no kamae because they see it, whether they have prior experience or whatever, they see it as a way to do a high block, right? I know what kosei is supposed to look like. They may or may not turn their hand and make it some hard style karate high block or whatever. But Either way, right? It's a mid-range, close range uke nagash. Okay. Once somebody understands that kosen no kamae is a mid to close range ichimonji or seigan, everything changes, right? And the uke nagash is a receiving flow, right? So one of the first lessons my students have to that we have a model, right? Kosei no kamae, kihon, ichi, whatever, right? It's just this sono kata kind of thing, right? They're learning how to use the kamae. So here's the way the kata works. Punch comes in, they shift in and under, receiving in kosei, and delivering a shot to the ribs at the same time. Okay, and then from that they shift in, arms open up. One controls one arm, other one moves to the other shoulder. They step behind, execute osoto nage, osoto gake, whatever. Right, this rear reaping hip throw kind of idea. Right. But the first thing they need to learn how to do is to receive that incoming punch in a way that traps the attacker, because any attacker worth their salt is going to punch, and it doesn't matter if you've blocked or not. They're going to retract it, and whether or not they throw the other one or not, right? Punch, retract it, and come right back in again. Okay? Or Hatsumi Sensei shows this all the time for bad uke nagash, right? Somebody will throw a punch, Hatsumi Sensei, show uke nagash, and then he'll flip it, right? He'll throw the punch, and the partner throws uke nagash, and then he'll catch the uke nagash. It's because the uke nagash is shit, right? Not uke nagash is shit, the way that one was done, okay? And so what he's showing is how to break this thing if you understand how that arm is weak or whatever, okay? And so what I need to do is create a situation very much like a Shinden Furoryu receiving hand, right? So we know these different ones from the different lineages, right? Like Gyokoryu typically puts, like when the person comes in and grabs, right? Gyokoryu just kind of brings the hand up, slides the thumb between the fingers and the chest, because what we're doing is we're preventing this person from grabbing and then doing this little yo-yo thing where you can pull you and then punch into your phrenic or vagus nerve. Phrenic nerve gets your diaphragm working, or keeps it working so you can breathe, and the vagus nerve keeps your freaking heart pumping. So if this guy can hit this kimon point, right, he disrupts your breathing, right, at least on one side, and he disrupts your heart rhythm. You don't get that back until you come to rest, unless your rest is permanent. Okay, so it's Kyusho attack, right? So what we do is he reaches out to grab. This can't be late, can't be early, otherwise he'll like grab your thumb. Okay, so on time, it's like catching a ball in a mitt. Okay, so as that comes in, thumb kind of catches, right? Generally, one of the ways Gyokoryu does it, another one is like low on the arm kind of thing. If you look at the Gyokoryu or the Kotoryu kata, you'll should be able to see these things, right? So typically this way, Kotoryu is a little bit more where it's the heel of the hand. Tagagi Yoshin just kind of comes up under like a jite kind of thing, just kind of comes up under this way. Tagagi Yoshin is that way. Shinden Furoryu Jutai Jutsu is similar, but as the hand comes in to grab and this comes up from underneath this way, this finger slides into that space. Well, that seems like nothing until the uke tries to let go. And what ends up happening for just a split second is it hangs up, and then he needs to wiggle his fingers out of there. But that buys you time. Okay? It's a really cool thing. So a lot of these things fit in like that. Okay? So what my students have to learn with this kosei is as they're submerging, right? Kamae has to be correct, but the arm catches what I call the muso dori point. It's the actual space that is the elbow joint, not the knob of the elbow. Okay. And so they have lots of failure moments, right? If they catch down here, partner just drops their elbow because they're responding to this counter, right? So as they punch and this arm comes up, if it's down here, nothing is inhibiting the use of the elbow or shoulder, right? So you just drop that elbow, punch from underneath, and everything is good. Or from right here, they just press down and break the kamae and then punch you in the face from there. Okay. What we find is that when the kamae is strong, it's proper, and we find this space, there is a slight lift that gets created in the shoulder joint. He can't feel it. Right. So it's not like this big thing, right? It's just this little bit of a lift. So when he tries to retract his arm, shoulder locks up and he needs to unlock the shoulder to get his arm back. Again, just like this, buys a split second because I'm cracking his ribs at that point, and then I can move. What I need to do when I deliver uke nagash is make sure that my uke nagash isn't easily broken. And it's not easily broken if I don't fucking do it in a way that it's broken to begin with. Okay? So I understand from the Tori's perspective, if we're only watching Hatsumi Sensei or whoever demonstrate, we look at it and go, well, it looks pretty cut and dry. But from the uke's perspective, from the uke sensation and experience, we understand what makes a good uke nagash and what doesn't. Okay? So here's where we're helping the partner get better. We're going, you don't have me. So I need to understand what having me, what taking me means. Remember, dori, to capture, to seize, to take. Right? The person who's called a tori, if you jumped in late, that is the exact same word as the word in musha dori, muso dori. Right? I know it starts with a D. It's the same thing. Okay, it's just a linguistic nuance because of how things are spoken and used in Japan, okay, or in Japanese. So, is it taking me? Is it early, late, on time, whatever? Okay, so the uke is both learning. Oh, okay, wow, that's how that works. Shit, I gotta dislodge the elbow, right? Because an uke nagash is applying kansetsu waza, joint locks. We don't have to be touching the joints, okay, to take them out of the sequence, okay? And what we're controlling in uke nagash is this connection, because this is directly connected to the spine, and the spine dictates how the hips move, and the hips dictate how the legs move. So 70% of our techniques, the whole goal of them is to do whatever you're doing, uke nagash, gyakute waza, whatever, in a way that seizes the spine and immobilizes the feet. If those things are not happening, no matter how good of a fighter we are, no matter how good we think we are with the techniques or whatever, we're not doing things in a way that will stop a killer quickly, buy you time to do your cool move. Okay? So the uke learns from the tori learns from the outside in, right? I'm doing this to touch him there and moving him this way, that kind of thing. The uke learns the technique from the inside out. This is what's happening to me when that thing is done. It's either immobilizing me, locking me momentarily or permanently or whatever, breaking balance or whatever, or it is not, or it is kind of. So how I'm helping my partner get better is to give them feedback, right? So that when they're the uke, they can feel for that. Oh, yeah, I see what you mean. And then what I discovered as the uke, okay, I'm going to take that back over to my work as the tori to add more, less, change the timing, whatever. Right? Something else, right? Learn to recognize good technique versus sloppy technique. Okay, that just plays right into it. Okay, so one of the reasons we don't do hook punches is not because they're not freaking powerful. Never, ever, ever get fucking hit with a haymaker or a right cross or whatever. Okay, the reason why we don't do them is because it leaves a fucking hole right in the middle, and you can move right into it. Right? So, well, you have to be faster. No, you don't have to be faster. I was taught a long time ago by Hatsumi Sensei himself that when you get this stuff right, you can slow down. You can be moving slower than the attacker and still beat him in time. It's the damnedest thing because to him, in this bubble, he thinks you're moving faster than him. But to everybody watching from the outside, can't understand why he can't beat you when you're obviously moving slower than him. Watch Hatsumi Sensei. He doesn't move faster than everybody else. He doesn't have these herky-jerky speed movements. Timing, related to distance, related to connection. Zanshin, Fudoshin, I'm not in my own way. So all kinds of things get freed up. Okay. But Hatsumi Sensei has said many times over the years when I've been in Japan, he'll call somebody out to demonstrate a technique. And then based on that demonstration, we're either working on that damn thing for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever, right? Before he calls somebody else out to demonstrate something, or we're working on it for 3 minutes or less. And then he calls somebody else out to demonstrate something else. But every once in a while, he'll stop after doing one of those things and he'll go, you must be able to recognize good technique from bad technique, right? And what I realized over time was if the technique that was demonstrated was a good technique, it may have holes in it and it maybe needs a little bit of improvement, but the strategy and the tactic and those things are sound. A little bit, angle could be made better, whatever, right? So the 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 45, whatever we're working on this technique and him showing variation, everything is to tighten it up. But if somebody comes out and demonstrates a shit technique, you're not going to be working on that for more than maybe 5 minutes. Okay. And then every once in a while, he would remind us, you need to be able to tell good technique from bad technique. You need to be able to tell a good technique, one that might need to be fixed or a little, whatever. Or as I mentioned earlier, right, you could be looking at a technique from a different art and go, we would do it this way, timing, angling, just a little smoke screen over here, whatever. Oh, that would home, right? From one that you need to be able to look at it and go, I'm not fucking doing that. I don't care how powerful it looks. I'm not doing that. That'll get me killed. In a real situation, that'll get me killed. Okay? Huge piece of it. Okay. And you learn the difference between those as the uke. Okay? Because ego doesn't drive the uke like it does the tori, right? Because again, the uke needs to be the winner. So we're on the roll of the tori, right? And we're going to win, right? Because the kata says so, right? Ego will ignore a whole bunch of shit. But on the uke side, it's expected that the uke is going to poke holes in this damn thing. Unless we're just a blind disciple. Okay. Another thing at this level, right, is we explore timing, right? I mentioned this earlier, right? Too early, on time, too late. Okay. Same thing with angling, right? Too acute, too obtuse, right on the money, right? That kind of thing, right? But what we do here is we begin to test the kata model. Okay. What still works if the attack changes, right? So it's a ski, right? But what if he rotates his arm and the elbow joint moves in a different direction? That also rolls the shoulder in and it's not going to be affected the same way, right? So if we do that, does the same uke nagash or the same contact point or the same angle still work? Or do we need to let the tori know? I think if he's coming in this way, you're going to need to come in from a slightly different angle. Or if we're doing that swatting counter-strike kind of thing that isn't a lot of Gyokoryu things, as I learned them, right? Okay, off at ski this way, right? We're going to hit here, right? But if this guy's attacking this way, I'm going to need to pop up from underneath, right? Because what matters is that I hit the hoshi point to create that moment and that movement, right? So again, I'm learning not just not just learning the why, but I'm learning timing. When should it land, right? What's too early? What's too late? What's right on? Okay. I'm learning the where, right? Where do I make contact? Okay. I'm learning, the nuances about different versions of that attack, right? Often, when we get somebody in and whatnot, we'll demonstrate something and they'll go, I would never punch that way, or I would never kick that way. I don't give a shit. Okay? We're not defending against you today. We're defending against the attacker who does attack that way. Okay. I know we all want it to be about us, but it's not about how we would attack. Okay? This is about how somebody else would. We're working on defending against that particular attack from that particular system or systems like it and that particular nuance. Whether you like it or not, if you're up against somebody who ends up in this end position that's not the way you attack, well, then your defense is not going to be as strong as it would be because not you. When I say you, I'm talking about all these other people because we're all enlightened, right? But we need to fight that side, right? Okay. So there's an old Zen saying, I don't think it's a koan or whatever, but before enlightenment, right? Mountains are mountains, rivers are rivers, trees are trees. Okay. To a student on the path of enlightenment, mountains are no longer mountains, rivers are no longer rivers, and trees are no longer trees. To a master, to an enlightened master, mountains are once again mountains, rivers are once again rivers, and trees are once again trees. The uke experience is like this. Right? What this means is to the average person, right? A punch is a punch is a punch. Right? To a student on the path who's actually studying these things, what the body does to generate different punches and things. I mean, we're looking at joints, we're looking at extension, we're looking at the effect that the hips or the spinal rotation or the balance shift, toes being slightly turned in and shoulders being rounded for like a Western boxer as opposed to being more open and being more square forward and whatnot for that Thai guy, Muay Thai, so. And then because we've gone through that process, right, to the master at the end, yeah, okay, you're right. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, a punch is a punch is a punch. But I'm going to be dealing with the punch and the arm position and the body mechanics that are coming at me because that's going to determine my approach to handling it. And that is what I want to feel for when I do an uke nagash. Because to a student on the path, right, in the beginning, we're blocking. Uke dome. Right? That just, it's like somebody ending a sentence with. I'm going to go to the mall. You want to go with? It just makes my brain glitch. Right. So, but to somebody at the ha level, right? Uke nagash. Yeah. What am I feeling? What does this contact tell me about his positioning, his force, his strength, his intention, his direction of movement, his balance, all kinds of things, right? That I can read through contact. And yes, you have to be training slowly so your left brain can be paying attention. And you do that often enough until your left brain's not going to be paying attention. It's all intuitive feel. Just like when you first started to learn how to drive. You paid attention to pressure on the accelerator pedal, on the brake pedal. You're looking at the white lines, the dotted lines, the yellow lines, the space, right? All kinds of things. Overcompensating, undercompensating, all kinds of things until now you fucking eat a cheeseburger while you're talking to several people, thinking about the asshole who pissed you off at 10 a.m. this morning, and you're barely paying attention to the fact that you're driving, let alone all these other little nuanced things, because the feel is in muscle memory. And you're not aware of those things until you buy a new car and the pressure on the accelerator pedal or the brake pedal or whatever. It's tighter, looser, whatever, the steering, all that kind of stuff. Kind of wakes you up a little bit because it's not the same. Okay? So, but at this point, this is where you stop being just the receiver, just the fall guy, right? And you start to sharpen both roles, uke and tori. Okay? Before I reference a book here that Terrence actually pointed me to, there's another way that we can look at these two things. At the shu level, at the beginning level, the focus should be on us, okay? Both as uke and tori. I know we're helping and it's a symbiotic relationship, but let's just do it from the tori's perspective at the moment, right? The focus is on me, right? Where do I put my foot? Where do I put my hand? What's the right angle? That kind of stuff, okay? At the ha level, the focus is on them, because everything that I do is because they did something, right? I'm going to become intimately familiar with the forces of cause and effect, right? Just like the tori steps to a certain angle and does uke nagash because as an effect based on the cause, which was this incoming punch on a certain angle, okay? And then the ukes or the tori's uke nagash produces a certain feeling, experience, or whatever for the uke, who then is going to. So at the shu stage, you're just going through the motions. Okay, he does this, you allow it. He does this, you do ukemi, whatever. Right at the ha stage, the connection about the why is different. Okay, so shu stage, it's about him. Ha stage, I'm sorry, shu stage is about me, the person doing the stuff, right? At the ha stage, the emphasis is on him. I'm doing what I'm doing because he's doing what he's doing. Okay? We're not two 6-year-olds in a sandbox slap fighting, just ignoring what the other person is doing. We're just so focused on what we're doing that doesn't really matter. Okay? So, anyway, speaking of books, before we take another little sidestep here, one of my peers coming up through the ranks, Stéphane Monier, he's French Canadian, right? Wrote a book called Kihon no Izen. Kihon no Izen. Kihon, everybody knows Kihon, right? Kihon. No, connector, right? Izen, Izen, right? So in his book, he emphasizes the growing depth of the uke's role as training progresses, right? It's a perspective that aligns with the traditional elimination of static roles, right, in favor of ongoing adaptive practice. Both tori and uke are instrumental in bringing things to life, in correct practice, right? Often the person playing the role of the tori, right, the defender, ignores the person they have as an uke, right, as much as the uke ignores the importance of the role they're playing, right? But the tori is ignoring it because all they give a shit is that the other person throws what they want so that they can do their technique properly. But you know what? At certain levels of training, you need to find people who are shitty at doing things. Okay? Because if your job is to fit in, then it shouldn't matter what they throw. Because you're going to do what you need to do that matches that thing. But as long as we're only focused on doing our thing the right way, then we need somebody who will do the things the right way so I can do my things the right way based on ego's determination. Now go find somebody out in the world who doesn't know anything about your friggin' martial art or our particular approach or whatever and get them to comply. Again, the only person in the world who's going to let you do what you do. I've always said in the dojo, the only person who's going to allow you to do these techniques to them is the uke, right? Your uke, your training partner. Nobody else in the fucking world is going to let you do these things to them. You have to earn every move. But you know what? Nobody in the world is going to let you do your break falls and take ukemi and counter things, except your tori. Works both ways. Okay? So, kind of tie into things, right? Again, as the uke deepens their abilities, their ability to take ukemi, that kind of thing, right? Their role transitions toward what in Japanese is called teki. Same person, right? But as the levels transition and as your skills deepen and whatnot, then your uke takes on more the role of teki, right? Embodying resistance. Teki means can mean attacker, but it generally means the enemy, right? When your partner takes on the role of the techie, their job is to screw your shit up because that's what the guy on the street would do. That's what the guy on the battlefield would do. Okay. Their job is to expose the holes in the techniques so that you can actually fix them. And most people don't. They just get aggravated and go find another uke who won't screw them up. Right? But their job is to expose things. What I was taught early on is if you can't find somebody higher ranking than you to pressure test your skills, then grab a white belt. Because they don't know the official way. They don't know the right way. And now you're forced to adapt to what is coming at you, not what you want to come at you. But hey, they were just master teachers and grandmasters, so maybe they were wrong. Okay. And the other thing is advanced uke. Again, supports pressure testing the form, right? Refining timing, adaptive skill, those kind of things. Really, really important stuff. Okay. So I don't actually have a copy of the book. I'm looking to get one for myself. Terrence had one for a while. If you've read Kyoho no Izen, I'd love to hear your reflections. Terrence shared some of his with me, right? But especially on how Sensei Munir frames the evolution of uke, right? So you can share it in the comments if you know what I'm talking about, or you can reach out. If you're one of my inner circle guys, we can discuss it in an upcoming coaching thing. Or, if you have the book, you're familiar with it or whatever, you can leave it in the comment later. Either way, we'll just go from there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dive straight into the final stage of transcending the form. Okay. So here the roles blur into a dynamic interplay. Remember what I said at the shu stage, the attention is placed on me, right? Whether I'm tori or uke, right? Getting the moves right, where to put my foot, where to put my hand, that kind of stuff, right? At the ha stage, it's about him. And so when I move to a certain angle, when I'm doing certain things, timing wise, whatever, right? It's because of where he is, how he's coming in, the angle of his arm, the timing, right? Best is based on him. It's at the shu stage, right is based on official movement. This is the kata. You don't break the kata, right? Copy it. Okay? At the ha stage, right is appropriate based on him. It is a matching, like gears coming together. Okay. It's either right or it's not. At the ha stage and above, the attacker is never wrong. I mean, you could split hairs on morals and ethics and all that kind of stuff. He attacked me, man. He broke the law. That's wrong. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about whatever he does because that's what he does. Okay. At these upper stages, the UK is never wrong. Okay. which means it's my responsibility to fit in with whatever they're doing. That's the skill. Okay? So at the re stage, though, it's the interplay that is the focus. And we drop the terms attacker and defender. Because leading up to this point, in a lot of dojo, I know for me, for a long time, right? We didn't use Tori and Uke. The Tori was the defender, the Uke was the attacker. And Tori equals defender equals good guy. Right? Uke equals attacker equals bad guy. But at this stage, they have to drop because whoever is applying a technique, I don't care if they're punching, kicking, trying to do a joint lock, whatever, they're the attacker in that moment. They are attacking the other person's body. That doesn't make them the bad guy. And the person who's receiving that, they're defending against it, they're trying to counter it, whatever, right? They're the uke, right? They are the defender. They're defending in that moment. Doesn't make them the good guy. See, often in the self-defense world, we take a moral high ground. Right? We look at the kata and go, oh, see, the Tori is supposed to win, so he's the good guy. No. We also practice from the perspective where we pick things up. We have to remember that the kata starts at a point in time and goes from there. Okay? Supposedly to resolve this and to end the fight. But what if Uke Tsuki was you? You started, the whole thing started off with him attacking you, right? He threw something at you, you uke nagash, and you come back in with your counter, but the kata picks up right there. And that uke from the previous exchange, you're the good guy. Holy shit. I didn't start this. This guy is mugging me. But I throw this thing in, and then he counters because he plans on resolving this shit with you on the ground. Well, that's a whole different way of looking at the kata. The kata are not the lesson. The kata is the foundation for where to start. Okay? So there is a rhythm, there is a ritsudo, there is a breath of the fight with this back and forth exchange, right? That we need to feel. We need to catch. Both people exchange roles as Tori Uke. But in reality, they're both and neither at the same time. And they're both techie. Techie means what? Enemy. Otherwise, they wouldn't be fucking fighting. They're both trying to win. They're both trying to not lose. They're both trying to get whatever the prize is. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a freaking fight. It's very high-level understanding. Ego has a hard time with it because it drops labels or it blurs labels. And ego, your manos vijnana, the center of your mind that tells this thing from that thing over there and differentiates, needs it to navigate. And the clearer things are, the easier it is for it. It doesn't like being in limbo. It doesn't like things being nebulous. But that's life. Okay. At this stage, the uke learns that sometimes ukemi works. Sometimes it's rough. Sometimes you simply take the shot and keep going because there was no way. What you end up doing is taking ukemi with the mind and the heart because you couldn't avoid the shot. I know we'd like to believe that the ideal is we're the ones that are going to get in the bone-cracking shots and we're going to write off everything else. But that's the beginner's mind trying to hold on to the ideal. The ideal is not dying. Or if you're going to die, at least die for a fucking cause and make sure your family's going to be taken care of, right? And not left to Jackwagon and his buddies. Okay? So even when we're doing ukemi as the uke, right? We learned that sometimes it works. But remember, as the tori, as we develop, we learn about the ukemi. Shit, now there should be a concern. I do this technique and he fucking takes ukemi. What do? Wait until he resets himself and then comes back in. And now I can never do that freaking technique again because he's seen it. And I should understand that I shouldn't do that again because he took clean ukemi. Well, that didn't fucking work. He obviously knows how to do that. So I progressed to the stage of how do I disrupt his ukemi, right? So, or I make it not so clean so he gets injured or it slows him down and it allows me to get another shot in or whatever. Okay. So now it's the uke. Shit. Okay. So when I hit and it's not so clean, what's the priority here? The priority is not pick yourself up like a toddler or worrying about a fancy roll and get out of that damn spot as quickly as possible by whatever means possible because he's about to kick an internal organ, your spine, whatever. I need to move from that space. Okay. And that might mean I have to like do a roll to transitions into another roll, transition to another one. So I'm moving in an odd line so he can't chase me in a straight line. Okay. Now we start to develop ukemi and rolling skills and breakfall skills and whatnot that they're more complex, right? I learned to punch as I'm entering a roll, right? Or as I'm taking ukemi. Okay? These are in Kotoryu, Tagagi Yoshin, Shinden Furoryu. I learned to punch or kick coming out of a roll, not roll, come out of the roll, and then punch or kick. No, I explore the rolling action. And so as the ball uncurls and seems like it grows limbs, at what time, at what position can I launch a stomp kick so the rolling momentum creates power behind that and the kicking action, whether it lands or not, stands me up, but provides a cover that he can't attack me as I'm coming out of the roll. Or same thing with the punch, right? The rolling action puts more power behind the punch, but it also creates a shielding action while I'm coming out, so I'm not coming out into a death shot. All kinds of things that can be explored here. Okay, the tori learns to remove the uke's ability to take clean ukemi. So the uke needs to get really freaking good at accepting damage and being able to mentally and emotionally, spiritually, whatever you want to call it, continue even after they're injured. Okay? The uke adapts anyway, right? That's the essence. Ukemi as kotsu, as the essence, not choreography. At this stage, the uke also begins to evolve into the teki, the enemy, the adversary. Okay, that doesn't mean competition. It means the uke begins offering authentic, intelligent resistance, forcing the tori to adapt, pressure testing the technique, finding henka in real time, not defaulting to pre-established favorites. So, again, the teki, the transition of the uke into teki, right? This is where kata becomes alive, right? It stops being dead choreography. Right? This step is essential. Without it, training remains theoretical. I know we're having a good time, but without it, or with it, kata breathes. And this is the stuff that prepares you for reality. This is how things get into muscle memory, and the adaptiveness gets into muscle memory. Okay, I promise you. Like I've done onikudaki, mushadori, musodori, all kinds of things to people in real time. Until you learn to feel what it feels like when the things are coming together, and you just know you have it because it created itself. Then the lines in the scrolls that say the way to always have the right technique at the right time is to never do a technique that's not already working. In the early stages, the mind goes, what? Am I doing it? Or is it, what do you mean it's not, it's already working? Huh? It's kind of like when you ask your mom, how will I know when I'm in love? And she went, you'll just know. Yeah. But it's experiential. When we can move away from left brain intellectual, step by step, control freak things and recognize that we do shit all the time based on feel and intuitive sense. There's a whole bunch of things firing. We don't even have to think about whether it's right. Like putting a bite of food in your mouth, chewing it, and knowing when to swallow and not choking yourself or inhaling it into your windpipe. Don't even think about it. And yet we do it all the time. When the kata turns into that, when our skill sets turn into that level of experience and oneness, that's what because you've transcended the models. You've transcended the do it right kind of thing. Okay. All right. Let's just round this out. We've already been going at this for a while. So let's take a look at lessons beyond the dojo, just very, very briefly. Okay. Being a good uke builds more than just skill, more than just fight skills. Okay. It builds character. You learn humility because the uke is not about ego, right? They're sacrificing sometimes, right, for the benefit of their partner, but they're also sacrificing the need to win or lose so they can explore things, which actually makes winning easier, right? But it's not about ego, right? As the uke, you learn adaptability because not everything can be neutralized. As the uke, you learn resilience because sometimes you're going to get hit and you need to keep going. Okay? Some people want to take a time out as soon as they bump the ground or what. I just had a brand new student tonight. It'll be 12 next month. And we train in socks on hardwood floor. Okay. Because nothing teaches you how to use your legs for stability and stabilization and balance and all that kind of stuff more than feeling like you're moving on ice. It was first class, right? And I'm doing a rising shin kick, lifting shin kick, right? Soki Ken. And I kept telling him, don't lean back, right? And he did one, and his base foot slid out from under him. And he came down, bumped an elbow a little bit hard or whatever, and I said, is it broken? No, sir. You okay? Yes, sir. But he kept rubbing him like, you're not dead. It's not broken. Okay? We need to keep moving. Okay? So let's go. Kick again. I could see part of his mind was paying attention to the pain and whatnot, but kept moving away from that. And I made the point, right? If that happened and somebody's attacking you, you just going to focus on the elbow and then he can just jump you and beat the snot out of you? No, sir. Okay, well, then let's get on with it. We've got a world that gives timeouts and safe spaces. But before we make fun of it, we want to make sure that we're not leaning into timeouts and safe spaces because something was uncomfortable. Being a warrior means facing things that scare the shit out of everybody else. But it's one thing to talk about it, and it's another thing to do it. Okay? Natsumi Sensei has often reminded us, play is serious. He says play, okay? But the role of the uke teaches that. Okay? And very early in my training, and many of you have been around for a long time, and you know this 20-year cycle kind of thing, right? That becoming a true ninja takes 40 years, right? The first 20 years is spent training on what he would often call the light side, right? Positive stuff, okay? How to defend, against very clear attacks and things like that, right? It's all the positive sides of training. You develop confidence and power and discipline and those kind of things, right? But the second 20 years is spent on studying the dark side, right? Mental and psychological manipulation, right? The carpet being pulled out from under you, right? Training in unfair, uneven, overwhelming situations, that kind of stuff, right? And often for people, right? But people are like, man, 40 years, holy shit, right? I know somebody was promoted to, or I got promoted to like 6 Dan in 6 years. He's not talking about that. Okay. He clarified this at one point where for most people, right, first 20 years also includes when you were growing up and learning about life. Then you become an adult. You realize just how screwy human beings can be to each other. You learn about manipulation and con jobs and all kinds of shit, right? For some of us, it was backwards, right? The early years were not that, and you became an adult and realized that, oh, not everybody's like out to get you or self-serving, or there actually are good people in the world and that kind of thing. But either way, you need both sides, right? So before you can return to zero, okay? You need to learn about success just as much as you need to learn about failure. And you need to learn that success is born of fixing mistakes and filling in the gaps with skill sets that you didn't have that caused the failure to begin with. And if you can systematically eliminate those, success happens by default. Maybe. That's the path. Receiving both sides until nothing is left but clarity. We learn half, give or take, of any technique or any lesson as the tori. You learn the other half, at least, as the uke. Okay? You don't really learn about solid, good relationships until you had a couple fall apart on you, or you getting kicked around in the world, and that's how we learn to navigate. Right? We got to balance out the idealistic viewpoint with the realistic viewpoint. But you know what? We also have to balance out the pessimistic, nihilistic viewpoint with a positive viewpoint. So if we just gravitate to one or the other, we've got a skewed view on life. And whatever our view on life is exactly what we're going to be getting, because we all create our own self-fulfilling prophecies. So the alchemy of the uke. In Mikyo, we often talk about at the core of things, right? The primordial enlightened sense, the universe as enlightened. Everything is as it should be, even as it changes. Okay, it's what Dainichi Nyorai, the character at the center of both mandala, represents, right? But this, from a almost a European perspective, right? We talk about the philosopher's stone, the alchemist who wanted to turn lead into gold. Okay, the lead and gold are only separated by like one molecular thing that's just off, right? One is lead, the other one is highly valued. But the uke does that in practice, right? This transmutation of lead into gold, right? So in practice, right, the pain, the falls, the ego checks, they're the lead. They're the stuff that nobody wants. But over time, they become gold. They become resilience. They become awareness. They become adaptability. Okay? And just like we start to see the value in lead, anybody that fishes, right? I'm pretty sure that they're glad that their sinkers are made out of lead and not gold, because we need something that just weights everything down. But anybody that's been fishing for a while has lost a shit ton of sinkers. Really glad that they're not made out of gold, because they'd be losing something much more valuable, right? But the value in the lead in that case is in what it does for us, right? Value is contextual, right? The same is true in uke training, okay? But where the transmutation really comes in is that we start to recognize that resilience stops being a skill and starts being a character trait. We become a resilient person, which means we're able to flex, bend, and recover from shit in any area in life. Better, faster, quicker. We become an aware person, not just in the dojo, not just when a punch is coming, not just when something is so fucking big you can't miss it anyway. Right? we become an adaptable person, right? Not just in a dojo. Okay. When that's the person we are, we can no longer not do those things. We no longer need ideal situations for things to work out. That's the alchemy of the martial arts. We go from learning skills to becoming a person who doesn't even think about the skills they have because it's just the way we operate. So there's no longer a thing of, am I doing it right or am I not doing it or whatever? You can't not do it. You can't not do it because it's who you are. And that kind of person has those skills, has those traits. We're not faking it. We're not blowing smoke up our own ass. Okay. So here's the lesson. Being a good uke isn't playing the other guy. It's not taking time away from your training. It's not taking turns working on the technique. You are the other guy. You are the other half of the paradigm. Without uke, there is no mastery. Sometimes you're working on the technique from the side of the tori. Sometimes you're working on the technique from the side of the uke. Okay? Being the uke, is how we learn to become resilient, adaptable, and unshakable. Okay? I'm working on Zanshin awareness. There's Zanshin for the tori, Zanshin for the uke. It's adaptability, right? Fudoshin, immovable heart, right? Shit's being thrown at you as the tori. Yeah, good. Don't be shakeable, right? Immovable heart, that kind of thing. Okay, but for the uke too, you need to be unshakable by the multiple times you're slammed into the ground and from weird, odd positions. You need to be okay with it. You need to be like the cat that can land on its feet, whether you land on your feet or not. Not just in the dojo, but in life. The number of times I've heard Hatsumi Sensei talk about something and then say, it's not just a martial arts idea. It's a life idea. And people just nod. Yeah. Okay, good. All right. So, open this up to some questions and whatnot. But before we do that, again, just a quick reminder, right? Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, help us get the word out. It helps us, helps you get notified by the platforms and stuff that, much earlier that we're doing stuff. And it helps get this stuff out to other people who are looking for training at this level. Okay. Don't forget this Wednesday, 3:00 Eastern, we're Whiteboard Wednesday. Okay. So I'm going to be taking a look at, the first level of training for the uke. Well, I don't know. I haven't put the whole lesson plan together yet, but we're going to be taking a look at some of these things. So then on during our Friday masterclass, we'll be taking a look at some drills and exercises to help the uke be better, right? At ukemi, at helping a partner, that kind of thing, right? So, but either way, right? That's the path, right? This is keiko, the old ways, right? So if we're going to be doing it traditionally, as much as I love that word, okay, and we're going to be exploring classical and the old ways and whatnot, this was part and parcel, right? This is keiko. This is the old ways. All right, James, what do we got? Questions, comments, complaints? Sensei, you suck. Sometimes. Depends on context.
Dave said it's important to give hesitant ukes some real impact even at the slowest speeds.
Yeah, sometimes we need to take a shot to realize just how much we can take. I once had a peer/senior. I had taken a group of students to a seminar that I had been to multiple times. It was a first level intensive. And we were working on roles and stuff like that. And There was something. Oh, we were working on Musodori. We were working on an armbar, basic armbar for them, and folks were having a hard time getting into the right position and right angle because they were like they're coming into the side of the elbow, coming into the crook of the all kinds of stuff, right? He's talking about like understanding how this thing works, and he has me use the uke and stuff. Next thing you know, he slips into a gyakunage. For those of you who know what that is, it's a friggin' musodori throw, right? And next thing I know, like I'm in the air, right? I'm about, I don't know, 4.5, 5 feet off the floor, right? Had to be about 5 feet because I remember sailing past Sensei Hayes and Sensei Malmstrom. So Shoshi Malmstrom was about my height. Sensei Hayes about 6 feet, 6'1", give or take. And I went by at his eye level. They never batted an eye. They're having a conversation. There's me flying by, right? And I'm like having an oh shit moment. And the throw was quite the distance. So from the time I left his arm and I'm in the air and then the ground is coming up and I have that oh shit moment and I came out of a roll, I was about 20 feet from my friend, right? From John, who had thrown me. Come out of this thing and I'm still a little bit disoriented. I'm thinking, motherfucker, you didn't tell me you're going to do that. Right? And so I go back and he's finishing up a lesson with them. And then I kind of lean in and I go, next time you're going to do that, how about if you kind of let me know you're going to do it? And he goes, I wouldn't have done it if I didn't think that you could do it. And I said, well, that's the kind of the point. You want to check with me to see if he goes, I don't know. Why would I check with you? Okay. So it was a pressure test. Okay. To see if I would resist against it. Of course I didn't. And, but it was at that moment that I realized that rolling was in to such a degree that when my body needed it, I would do it, even if my brain was in absolute doubt. But I needed that moment. And my ukemi improved a lot after that because I surrendered the need to know which direction, which roll, which whatever, because that would have gotten me broken. Right? I'd have tried to select as the ground is coming up. Everything just got better from there. Anyway, what else we got?
Terrence has a question. Uh-oh. So is what you're saying that at the shoe level, is an uke supposed to simulate the physiological reaction of Tori's attack on their body? Then it's at the ha level when the uke can start creating the conditions so that Tori has to earn the technique. Am I understanding that correctly?
Kind of. At the ha level, there is some bleed over, but there's not a lot of resistance. The resistance is a teaching model. It's not the stuff at the read level where, like, if I can take it away and pop him, I'm going to do that. Okay. Or if I can trap him or turn the technique around and reverse it into something else, I'm going to do that. Okay. It depends on what speed you're going because it's soft training. There has to be an understanding that muscle tension has to be equal to the speed. Like if you're going slowly and somebody's resisting as if they were lifting weights, right? Or they double the speed because they can, that's not reality, right? At soft training, at whatever speed we decide, that is the 100%. Okay? Because if we were going at full speed at 100%, and you suddenly doubled your speed, that's not fucking possible. 100% is 100%. It was like when I was in the military, and you're like, if you're not giving 110%, you're taking up too much space, right? Shoshi Malmstrom used to like to pick on that, right? What do you mean if you're not giving 110%? There's 100% is 100%. So, what I'm saying is that at the shoe level, the uke lets the tori do what they're doing. Okay, their job is ukemi, even standing ukemi. Right, I'm adapting to what he's doing. Okay, but if the technique breaks, we'll know that it breaks because he's not doing anything to me to create that thing. right? So ultimately, my job is to let him take me down, and I'll receive that and whatever, okay? Because he's trying to learn the technique. I'm not doing anything to inhibit that. Everything I'm doing, I'm sacrificing everything so that he can learn how to do the damn moves. Anything that I do to inhibit that at the shoe level is dickish because he's not ready for any adaptation or henka or whatever. So screwing him up before he learns the technique is an egocentric, disrespectful, asinine move. Or we could write it off to I don't know any better and I should be taught. Okay. So, or he should find another uke because I'm not capable of helping another person or another student learn something that maybe I know, but I'm just going to assume that he does. This is not about you, Terrence. This is just, okay. So at that level, it really is being the fall guy and sacrificing. Okay. So he can learn the technique properly. Okay. At the ha level, we start adjusting things, and I'm more critical about timing and those kind of things. So if his timing is off, I can say, no, dude, you're late. You like the ideal moment for landing an uke nagash or an uke uch, these counter strikes, is as he's locking down to brace for impact, because that immobilizes things, right? And so when that uke nagash or that uke uch hits, it catches my spine, right? Because this is stiffening for things. If he's over, right? If I'm not at that point yet, he catches it early. Everything's kind of floppy, and it's easy for me to ride it off. If he's late, the punch would have landed, and I'd already be retracting. Okay, and so there's gray areas between both, right? So if we're stuck between shu and ha, then like I'm gonna punch and then hold to give him time to do things, right? But at the ha level, right, I need to be throwing that punch, and as soon as I realize it's going to miss, like if he moves too soon, whoop, I'm going to retract that because I'm not going to follow up on something where it's obviously going to miss. So the Tori needs to learn last second evasion so he surprises me. If he surprises me, right, not only am I bracing for impact, but subconsciously my body is about to use his body for some stability. Okay. And so when that's taken away last second, kind of like I'm going to push against a door and somebody opens it just to go to touch it and I fall in, there's that little bit of falling that happens when that body suddenly isn't there. And that flinch response to catch my balance causes tension. A properly applied in time and whatnot with an uke nagash, uke uch, counter strike, receiving, whatever, exploits that moment. These are the things that are explored at ha, and it's a back and forth give and take, right? But the uke is paying attention to the when, right? And then when it's their turn to be the tori, they want to try to catch it at the same time, because what they're learning from here, they move over to apply with the tori. Same thing with the tori, right? That one worked better than these two. What was different? So then when I'm uke, because maybe my uke can't help me yet, right? So that one worked really well. He didn't give it to me. I know because I just asked, and that surprised him. He was like, "Whoa!" Right? Um, so, but these other two, right? So now when I'm the uke and he's doing different things, I want to try to find that. And maybe what I'll say is, dude, can you make contact just a little bit sooner, or can you hold for just a little bit longer? Like you're moving too soon, you're moving too late, making contact with me too soon, or can you try making contact farther down here instead of up here? Right? Let's see what that does. And it's almost like being in a lab and experimenting back and forth. Okay. So when I'm resisting, not resisting his technique at the ha level, I'm experimenting with resistance. The higher up I go in that level, as I'm about to get into the D level, that's when we're going to pressure test, right? Like how much tension can be in this arm for an uke nagash or an uke uch to still move it. Let's say we're doing Jumonji no kata, right? And so from here, as that punch comes in, I shift, bang, hit that arm, right? I only needed to move that width, right? Bang. So I can drop that in and catch those ribs. How much tension, how heavy handed, how strong can this person be where I can still create the window of opportunity to snag it? Okay. Where the arm will move. Okay. Above that, it won't move. It's really important to understand. So when this guy starts moving in and I see size and I see certain muscle contours and whatnot, well, guess which technique I'm not doing because I've learned that piece. Okay. Or I get it, right? But what angle do I need that tells me I can get all the way in there and he won't, as I'm moving in, close it off? So the uke, right, tries when he delivers this uke uch, right, to get that arm to move, right? The uke fights through the pain or whatever to get that. So he lets it happen and then very quickly tries to cover before the tori can land the boshiken to the ribs. Okay. So I need to see if he is he hitting it correctly? Because again, now the tori at this stage, because of pressure testing, the tori soft training is going to have to go by the wayside. That uke, that strike is going to have to hit the hoshi because I need to understand as the uke, right? Soft training's not going to do that, right? He's touching, I move, he stabs, I flinch, right? But at a certain point, I'm going to have to let somebody with a boshiken hit that butsumetsu so I can feel what that makes my torso do. So now when I'm helping somebody else and I'm simulating it, I know exactly what muscles fire to create that. Later on in the re stage, as the uke, I need to explore how do I fix the torso from here in a way that, like, these muscles are not going to help very much if that was really hit. Okay? So instead of trying to right myself this way, right in the same location where he can go pop, pop and hit the same point again, right? Here, I want to move my hips to right the situation, not see, to right myself this way, I have to contract muscles that were just elongated. Right? There's a whole bunch of stuff that's in here. Okay. But I have to be hit here to understand what that does to the shoulder spine, how that makes the person move. And then we're going to need to do something where, um, let's say we back it down a little bit with the uke, right? So now we understand how that works, but we need to recognize that somebody who's whacked on drugs, has a neurological disorder, is either on drugs or alcohol or whatever, and so they respond to pain, but the flinch response is delayed because of the pain or because of the chemical inducement, right? Um, and so now we can back it down to soft training again. So I'm going to do Jumonji no Kata, maybe. But as I tag the Hoshi point, my uke will have already pre-decided whether or not he's going to let the flinch response open the window or he's going to get touched and nothing's going to change. Right? And so now that helps the tori learn to make sure they have a frickin' opening and not assume an opening because, well, that's what the kata says is supposed to happen. Yeah, well, if the guy's jacked on fucking drugs, excuse my language, YouTube, um, he's not going to move. Okay. Or he's desensitized because of the kind of work he does. Welders and people that have had, they've had a fire injury or whatever. Fucking nerves are dead in there. You're not going to get the same flinch response because neurologically they're not connected. Okay. we have to transcend the model, and we have to transcend the normal dojo approach for the general masses when we start to recognize the need for training and exploring areas where things are not freaking perfect. Right? That's what adaptability is for. I don't know if that answered your question, but I think you were trying to make things too hard and fast. And I definitely think that you're really trying to get to the pressure testing very quickly because it's part of your personality. We'll talk about that during our next Mikyo session. How about that? Anyway, reminds me of the Ed Gruberman skit with the Frantics, right? Ed Gruberman, one must learn patience. Yeah, patience. How long is that going to take? That boot to the head skit. It's fucking, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What else?
Last thing I see is from Victor. I appreciate the deeper dive and understanding of Shuhari. I find many times the uke loses his attacking skill, strikes that don't truly meet the target.
Yeah, that's why I said earlier. Sometimes don't move. You'll know whether or not your uke is a good uke. Even the best of fighters or whatever, when they're in this kind of paradigm, right? They're not trying to win for a trophy or whatever. Mom and grandma's lessons come just flying right back in again. Okay? So do the best you can with what you have, right? What is the uke's job? To authentically, at whatever speed, to authentically deliver an accurate strike, grab, kick, whatever. What is the tori's job? To not let that land, to neutralize the force of the incoming attack. Right? That's our phase 2 in our 5-phase paradigm, right? So, but I don't want to hurt him at this speed. Let's that's why we train slowly, right? And then you can pick things up. The goal ultimately is 8 out of 10 times correct on the technique at 80% full speed. I know everybody wants to go full speed, but it's a recipe for disaster. Okay? The interesting thing about the way the human system is designed is you don't have to train at full speed to be able to fight at full speed. You have to train correctly, getting the muscles to do things accurately, because under the adrenal response, you'll be as fast as you can be and you'll be as strong as you can be. So you don't need to train to be strong and fast. You can do things to increase your response time, your reaction time, and you can do things to increase your natural muscular strength. But if you think you need to go full on so that you're prepared for a fast, strong street fight, it's not the way it works. I'm living proof of that. Okay? When I applied things for the first time at full speed, I was in the intermediate stages. We had green belts then, so I was somewhere 5th Q, 4th Q, something like that. And shit just came out at full speed because the situation caused the adrenal response. So stop trying to worry about things happening at speed and at full resistance when if you screw that up at that level with your training partner, somebody's getting hurt. So Atsumi Sensei shifted to soft training in the mid to late 80s, early 90s. What was it was later than that. Princeton Tai-Kai. What was that, 98, 97, 98, something like that? Okay. Because everybody's getting fucking hurt. Everybody thought they need to be authentic fighters. Yeah. Now, okay, not knocking it, but it's an ego-driven desire. as opposed to a scientifically based approach to training. So anyway, one more, last one, then we're going to wrap this up.
Well, that was the last
Okay,
I see.
cool. Anything you want to throw on top of this fire before we wrap it up? No?
No,
Okay.
I don't think so.
No worries. All right. So we will continue on with this and making better uke. Starting with Whiteboard Wednesday on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, please, Eastern. And then that'll move into Friday's masterclass. So I know my Nimpo masterclass people will be on, a bunch of my Inner Circle people will be on, but there'll be a way for folks to enroll or sign up for that class a la carte, so to speak, right? So if you want to look at some of those things from like a training drill and just that kind of approach from the uke's perspective, that's the focus for the rest of the week. Okay. Also, mark calendars, especially for my regulars, right? The 22nd and the 29th, I will be out of the country, be on a cruise ship, can't guarantee the internet and all that stuff. So there will not be KUDEN podcast. I hate doing it 2 weeks in a row, but we'll try to set things up so that we'll run a couple of oldies but goodies, that kind of thing. We can now do that in our streaming service. So set that up so it's already timed and goes out. So we don't want anybody to break from their habits. New habits are rebuilt way fast, including not going to class. So, all right, that's it. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I will talk to everybody again next time. Until then, be safe, train hard, and we'll see you next time on KUDEN.
Get more of KUDEN Radio, subscribe through your favorite podcasting site, or join our clan of serious modern warriors at onlineninjaacademy.com.